Hey everyone, Ikoi here with a tutorial video actually on Castle Clash, where I'll be talking about a Guild Wars strategy called h2h, head-to-head, hero-to-hero, whatever you prefer to call it. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about this strategy in later videos. This specific video will be talking about the hero setup, so like what heroes you'll be using for this setup. I think this alternative is one of the cheaper kind of ways to do Guild Wars, and also still do it effectively. You can score really high with a head-to-head strategy if you do it right. And it can also be very reliable and very cheap on shards. So if you are free to play, this is a totally viable option, I feel. This account right here is free to play. I haven't bought any gems on this account. And you can tell it's pretty high up there, and it scores really well with a very weak team. So let's go here to my Guild War rankings. Here's my score, 150,000 might, 2.7k score. This scores really nicely on this account, and I rarely drop any flames on this account. So usually it gets a perfect score every time. So a few times I screwed up, but that's really rare. This is very consistent. I like the strategy a lot. My other account, I actually have a minnow, and I still use the head-to-head strategy. It has a lot better heroes in terms of they're built up more, but the same strategy applies. I'll be doing the strategies on this account, the Smurf account, because it's weaker. I feel you guys should see that a weaker account can actually score high in Guild Wars if you know how to score right. So this video I'll talk about the different heroes, but if you don't want to see that and you just want to see like playthroughs or examples of me, go look at the description and I'll have those other videos listed there. But for now, we'll talk about how these heroes. So see you in just a second. Alright, so let's get started talking about the different types of heroes you can use. I'm first going to talk about the ones that I use and why I use the ones I use. But then later I'll talk about different substitutions you can make that I think are reasonable ones to make for Guild Wars. So if you look here at, this is a pretty sucky Guild Wars base, but if you look here at the base, so what's the strategy that you need to do when you attack with head-to-head? So the goal of a head-to-head Guild Wars attack is to kill the enemy heroes and then clear out the base. So if you do something like a minnow bomb strategy, you don't care about actually killing the heroes. But in a head-to-head combat, you do not want to be destroying buildings until the heroes are dead. And this is why it's reliable. If you pick your heroes to kill the enemy heroes before the enemy buildings are 50%, you can keep Xing out and repeating until you kill the enemy heroes. So this is the disadvantage with this build, is that it takes a little bit more time than something like minnow bombing would take, but you do get multiple chances and multiple shots at doing this right. So the goal is kill the enemy heroes, then clear the base. We got that? Okay. So let's go on to what this account uses for head-to-head. The first one is Skull Knight. So don't be upset if you don't have a 5/5 crowd. I actually don't think that's necessary. I think it's really nice, and it makes things much more consistent and makes your life a little bit easier. But I actually feel Skull Knight is still one of the MVPs of the head-to-head strategy. You might be like, well, Koi, you're an idiot because Anubis is. Well, there's a reason why I put Skull Knight at number 1. For the one, he's a great PvP or hero killer, so he can kill enemy heroes. But more importantly, after the heroes are dead, he can clear an entire base by himself. So if all your other heroes are dead and he's alive, you basically have 3-flamed the base. Okay, so I think he's one of the more important ones. Anubis can clear the enemy heroes by himself pretty easily, but the thing is, from what I've seen and heard from people, he can't really clear out a base by himself if he's the only one alive. So that's why I put Skull Knight as one of the more important ones. He's great on both things that a head-to-head wants. Kill enemy heroes and then clear out the base. So I would love your Skull Knight if you have one. If you don't have a Skull Knight, it's gonna make your head-to-head strategy a lot harder, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I could give better advice on that. I'm gonna give some alternatives that I think you can use, but that's the sad part. It's gonna be I think you can use. If you don't have Skull Knight, you'll want multiple heroes to be alive after the enemy heroes are dead. But if you have Skull Knight and Skull Knight's alive and the enemy heroes are dead, you don't care if your other heroes are dead or not, because he can clear out a base by himself. The first question I usually get asked is, well, he can't clear out the enemy base by himself because he'll get stunned a lot. And this is a really good point, and this is exactly why in Guild Wars, I move my Skull Knight off of Goblet of Life and put him on Blitz Skull. So if Skull Knight's on Blitz Skull, he has that stun immunity to actually clear out a base if he's the only one alive. So Skull Knight's really important. I put AVR on him. AVR is also a really important pet to have during Guild Wars. He silences. So even if you don't have an Ares, AVR is going to be one of your MVP's pets. So Skull Knight and AVR, one of the most important heroes and pets in the head-to-head strategy. So I would make sure, especially if you don't have an Ares, level up your AVR. Mine's level 8. I took as high as I could go. The breaking points, I would say level 6 is fine if you want to do something more cheap. Try to get him up to level 6 if you can. But level 8, just the longer silence, the better. So there's my MVP, Skull Knight. Let's move on to the next one. So Pumpkin Duke. So some people don't like using Pumpkin Duke. One of the reasons I use Pumpkin Duke is because he's already built up. Most people build him up already for dungeons. So that's such a convenient double use there. Pumpkin Duke is used everywhere. So you can use him in Guild Wars and it works just fine. You can see here I have a 3-bite. That's not a huge deal. It's okay. Okay, but that's one reason I use Pumpkin Duke. It's just cheap. You don't have to build anything else. I put the Unifa on him for the dodge. Pumpkin Duke's probably gonna die. Okay, but that's okay. As long as he procs once or twice, you're fine. The one disadvantage of Pumpkin Duke, if he goes off and goes crazy, your heroes can skyrocket through an enemy base before the enemy heroes are dead. You have to be careful with that. So if you start using this strategy, be very careful of your Pumpkin Duke stacking too much and the enemy heroes are not dead. I'll kind of go over on the heroes that if they're still around, you shouldn't worry about too much. But certain heroes, if they're still alive, they can still throw us up some trouble if your Pumpkin Duke goes crazy. So be a little bit careful with that. You don't have to use him, but I use him because I've already built him up. Like, you already usually take him to 9 skill anyways. So that's why I use Pumpkin Duke. The next one's Michael, which not everyone has Michael. That is fine. Michael's a fairly recent addition into my Guild Wars team. I used to use Cupid. I just replaced him with Michael. Michael just makes things more consistent because he's another tank. If Pumpkin Duke dies, or he can take aggro off of Pumpkin Duke, and his Archangel can take a lot of hits. So I like using Michael. Take him up to, at least 8 skill if you have them. If you don't have Michael, that's fine. You don't need Michael. It just makes things a little bit more consistent. But he's a buffer. He can take damage. He deflects damage. He's just all around a good Guild Wars hero because he can kill the enemy heroes, take tower damage. He's great. So next off, Ares. Ares makes your life a lot easier. I actually am of the opinion you don't need Ares for this strategy. And everyone, I don't know many people that would be willing to say that, but my guildies can vouch for me. I actually did Guild Wars on this account for a long time without an Ares, and I did head-to-head. And I was hitting 200k level accounts without an Ares, okay? Do you know how I did it? This is how I did it. This little pet. This little pet's amazing. So if you don't have an Ares, this is why it's so important. And also so important if you don't have an Ares, Celestin. Celestin can remove the buffs of enemy Skull Knights, which are going to be a pain in your rear end. You want to be killing those Anubises, you want to be killing those Skull Knights under silence before they actually proc, okay? So Celestin can remove the buff from Skull Knight, which is handy. But AVR can make sure that they don't revive and make your life a living nightmare. I will say, if you don't have an Ares, I'm sorry, your life is going to be a little bit harder because this is just a much more reliable silence. But if you don't have them, I don't think all is lost. You might not be able to hit the highest targets of your guild, but you can still hit high targets, and I wouldn't be afraid to try and go higher. Next one I used is Warlock, and you can see here I have a 4 War God. It's not like it's an 8 War God like my main account has. This is just a 4 War God. I even had the option to put in a 5 War God on here, and I didn't do it because I didn't see it even helping me. Because I put all that fame into Guild Wars with no real improvement because I'm already hitting the top few bases. So that's completely unnecessary. But he gives a shield to your allies, okay? And he also does damage. He's just great. But have you guys noticed something here? Look at this. Single evolved, and the only double evolved were these ones right here. And I told you Michael's a fairly recent addition. I had Cupid before. So before, I had just Skull Knight and Pumpkin Duke as my double evolved heroes. Now Michaelis, so now I have 3. But I'm hitting like the top 7s with... I was hitting the most... top 7 or so on Guild Wars with mostly single evolved heroes. It's still amazing what you can do with single evolved heroes here in the game. I will say Gunslingers made it a little bit harder. You kind of have to ignore the Gunslinger bases with very weak heroes. But there's a lot of people that still don't have her, so it's not such a huge deal. And you can actually still take on Gunslinger bases with this. I've been able to do it. I probably won't be covering that. It's really hard to do, and I'm probably going to be focusing on the, bulk of the main bases without Gunslinger. But if I see a Gunslinger base that I can hit, I'll probably showcase that. But not every Gunslinger base you can hit. Some are going to be outside your reach. The last hero I use now is Valentina. She's a 5-bite, and I find that handy. I don't think you need a 5-bite, but if you have a 5-bite Cupid, 5-bite Ares, 5-bite Val, or some sort of 5-bite hero, it helps a lot when those bases don't have much for you to initially proc on to help you get you ready. See, Skull Knight can end up dying without his proc up. So if you have anything that's 5-bite to get them up, that's great. If not, just crest it. Just get a 3-bite or something and make it so it procs really soon. So I don't think the 5-bite's necessary. It just makes things a little bit more consistent and easier. I think that's all it does, personally. So those are my 6 Guild War heroes that I use, okay? And as you can see here, a lot of them are fairly common. Ares is usually fairly common. Warlock's pretty fairly common. Pumpkin Duke you have to have. Skull Knight, I wish he wasn't required, but he's close to being required. Sorry about that. Anyways, so in the next part, I'll talk about different heroes you can use